Welcome to a new Soccer Down Here 1v1. My name's Jason Longshore. Joining me today, Felipe Cardenas. Felipe, thanks for the time. We appreciate it.
Always a pleasure, Jason. Happy to be here.
What we wanted to do with these 1v1s, it's kind of a spot where we can dig a little deeper into topics and into things. And today, and specifically with Felipe, I wanted to get into a little bit of further explanation about some of the topics that come up around the Latin side of the game. And what immediately grabbed my attention in Orlando on Friday night was the quote that Mike Gramajo tweeted out, sports writer covering soccer in Orlando, does a lot of stuff with ProSoccerUSA.com and the Orlando Sentinel. And Mike tweeted out Josef's answer about Atlanta United continuing to remain unbeaten against Orlando. And in English, Mike's translation was, I don't know, to be honest. Every time we play them, they play like it's the game of their lives, and we continue to father them. The father them part, I think, hit like a thunderbolt in the Atlanta United fan base and has made for a lot of funny jokes and lots of stuff. But I knew enough when I saw it that didn't sound right, and I'm by no means a Spanish speaker, but I think I can understand enough context to be dangerous, and this one felt odd. And I saw, Felipe, that you immediately reached out to Mike and asked for the answer in Spanish. Can you kind of fill us in a little bit on where Josef was going with this response?
Yeah, of course. And first of all, just again, thank you for having me on. I think I'm happy to kind of be that bridge culturally between, the players at Atlanta United, the coaches, and the fans. It's something that I relish. It's something that I enjoy doing. It's part of my role with the athletic soccer. So, the night of the Orlando game, I saw Twitter really just blowing up because of that quote in English. And to your point, I reached out and asked for the Spanish translation because I understood it right away. And it's because I'm a fan of this sport. I grew up a fan of this sport. I grew up watching soccer in South America. And to be somebody's, let's just be, honest here, to be somebody's daddy in a rivalry game is a big deal. The funny thing about the Josef quote is that type of banter is usually reserved and used between fans. It's the fans that are saying, "Somos tu papá." We are your father. We are your daddy. And so it was really interesting to me for a player in a rivalry setting to use that terminology. And I think for me, what it says and what it revealed is that, the players realize what this game means to the fans between, Atlanta and Orlando. And Josef is extremely bold, in post game, especially if he's had a solid performance. You're going to get, some quality sound bites from him. So, to say that we continue to father them, probably not the correct translation, but it is a very difficult translation to do. It's more like a transcreation. And in this case, he was saying, like, we continue to own this rivalry. They haven't beaten us yet.
Yeah, see, I knew a little bit about the Pappa line and how it gets thrown around. The first I really came around it was the song that Argentine fans sang at the 2014 World Cup, set to the tune of Bad Moon Rising, Creedence Clearwater Revival, which is one of the greatest things. I mean, one of my favorite videos from that World Cup is a group of Argentine fans taking over a food court, and they just keep singing it, and it keeps getting louder every time they say that Maradona is más grande que Pelé. So I'm just dying laughing at it. But they used it there too, and as you said, it's something generally like fan to fan is how that's used, not so much player to team.
Absolutely. I mean, again, let's hit on that, because that was what stuck out to me. It was that we were hearing it from a player, and right after the game. This is a post-game interview where he obviously broke a record. The world was watching. Let's be honest. The world was watching that game because of the significance of the record, because of who Josef Martinez has essentially grown to be in this, in his 2 years in Major League Soccer. And the global press was there as well. If you watch, I just watched the interview again right before, the show, and it happens about at the 6-minute mark. And that was when actually the post-game scrum had already gone into the Spanish language version, if you will. So he knew what he was doing. And that's something else that I wanted to mention to you, Jason, that I think Josef likes to test limits, especially in these types of settings. And I've noticed, in the short time that I've been covering the team and I've been in enough scrums already with Josef, whether he's in a good mood or a bad mood, when he's in a good mood, and not only a good mood, but when he's in those post-game scrums, I think he knows that he can get away with some things because the majority of the post-game media is English speaking. And so sometimes when he's in, kind of a playful mood, he likes to say things that'll put Justin Velhaus, the interpreter for Atlanta United, in a difficult spot. Yeah, like I've noticed that too. And I think that was an example. Like he'll just go there. He'll just hit hard with a quote that in the moment could be difficult to translate. Another example was after Columbus, when Miguel Almiron scored his goal, and I kind of tweeted about like having to, he essentially unsalted himself, which is another, very South American term, se sacudió, se quitó la sal, he unsalted himself. The monkey is off his back. When I talked to Josef about that moment after the game, he obviously said how happy he was, and that's what got play. The first part of his quote was what was all over the internet. Oh, he's so happy for Miguel, and it means so much, and whatnot. But what he said afterwards, when he went into what I tell Miguel, it's like making love to your wife. Scoring goals takes a little bit of love. So he said that in the moment, and Justin didn't translate it. Justin, in fact, I could see him squirm a little bit.
Right.
And after that squirm, I kind of had a moment with Justin. I was like, hey, you missed a big chunk of that quote, like kind of like joking. He's like, man, I wasn't going to go there. So Josef does that. And I think this was an example of saying, he recognized the moment, he recognized the audience, and he recognized, what the Orlando Atlanta rivalry means and is becoming, for the fans of both squads. So it was a big moment because he took what, like you said, what's usually reserved between rival fans, and he turned it into a quote from a player that had just played in the game.
It's really fascinating, the side of it, to me, as somebody who has grown up in Atlanta but has always been very intrigued, and honestly, I mean, my fandom started with Argentina and started with Maradona, and I've been around the local Latino leagues, so I've tried to be around it as much as I can. I've tried to bring whatever elements of that I can to an English-speaking audience, and at least try to provide the proper context for these sorts of things. How important do you think that is with Atlanta United and such a Latin-influenced team for the English speakers to not miss out on some of this stuff?
It's huge. I know you and I have had our moments on Twitter too, and we talk about our love for the 1986 World Cup and what that means. What that meant for us, and that was really when Argentina and Maradona were on top of the world. So I understand that as well. That meant a lot to me, and how I grew up watching the sport. I wore an Argentina jersey almost every day to school, from like 86 to 90. And going back to, the daddy to father comment, as a Colombian, Argentina is our daddy. Like right. No matter where we are, no matter where Colombia is in the standings in a World Cup qualifier, if we're in first, if we're in second, when we play against Argentina, Colombians say, ellos son nuestro papá, siguen siendo nuestro papá. They are still our daddy. Like, we can't shake it. So,
even after the 93 win, that was such a huge win, the 5-0 win going into World Cup 1994, it still doesn't go away.
It doesn't go away. That was our highlight that will live on forever. But, in the last qualifiers, Colombia was playing well, and it seems like when they meet each other, it's a big game. And obviously because of who's, the players on the field, but it's always a big game. And in the last qualifiers, Messi just took over, scored 2, and I think he put us away 2 goals and an assist. So that was one of those times where my friends were like, "Yep, there you go." Like, some things never change. So, but to go back to your original question, about who Atlanta United is, what they are as a club, what the culture is like inside inside the walls of the club, I think is very important for the fans, that they understand that it's very intentional what they're doing, by bringing in Tata Martino, by bringing in a staff that he trusts, that he has a history with from Newell's old boys, and then the players that they recruit also come with a specific profile from South America, and right now, early in this process, a lot of them are coming from the Argentine league. So as a fan, if you're just getting into to Atlanta United, yes, like, go all in and understand, and really embrace the culture of the club. And in my first piece for The Athletic, when I sat down with Josef and Miguel, I brought that up. I'm like, I think this is a city that early on is already embracing the Latin American and culture of the club, and the diversity of the club for a city that maybe they weren't expecting that. Yeah, I think everyone wanted a team, but for their team to come out and say, this is who we are and this is who we're always going to be, I think is very significant.
And that last part's the key to me. This is who we're always going to be. I remember when the flack started with the Atlanta Hawks ownership around emails about bringing, appealing to fans from Alpharetta and not wanting to be essentially too black. That was their concern in the fan base. Yep. And I always looked at the other side of it with the Falcons. I thought going to a Falcons game was always great for me because it felt like the most diverse place in Atlanta. But as a soccer fan, I knew that there was a part that was missing. In mainstream English-speaking Atlanta culture, yes, an Atlanta Falcons game is incredibly diverse, and it's a lot of fun. It's great. But I knew that if Atlanta United could tap into the rest of Atlanta, the part that might not be into the Falcons or American football, then you could truly create the most diverse place in Atlanta. And Mercedes-Benz Stadium on an Atlanta United match day is that, because I think everybody is at the party.
Totally. I mean, everyone's there. Just when you're walking up to the stadium, you see every single demographic represented. Black, white, Latino, gay, lesbian. Everyone is at this game, and everyone is there for the same reason. And as a Latino, I think it's great as well to see, first generation Latinos that have come to Atlanta for whatever reason. They might be coming here for work, they're staying with family, they're getting away from civil war in their country, whatever it may be. They get here and all of a sudden they're like, oh my gosh, there's a good team that I can come and watch, and that's what I identified with really early on when they first showed up, is that not only does Atlanta have a team in MLS, they have a team that's competing right away. The product on the field is good. You can get into the tactics with this team. They're not just out there, trying to make something work. They have a clear identity, and everyone that's really involved, I think, can latch on now, early in the process, early in their history, and start to understand why this was such a hit right away. Everyone has kind of covered it about what Atlanta is. It's a transplant city. There's so many cultures, so many people from different backgrounds, and that's very important. But really having a team that came and planted their flag, and 10 years down the road, when this generation of players have moved on, I think that we'll still be seeing the breadcrumbs that Tata Martino left, or that that Darren Eales, when they kicked off this journey, we're still going to be seeing that. Really quickly, something that I talked to Jeff Larenowitz with that didn't make it into the piece that I wrote for The Athletic was, I asked him, I said, when you move on, when you look back at your history with Atlanta United, and we're talking about tactics. So when you look back and you remember where this team began, and the high press and the possession, and when people were saying this isn't going to work, do you hope that you're watching Atlanta United in 5-10 years and they're still playing the same way? And he said, absolutely, I hope so. So I think that this team is they're very intentional, very purposeful with what they do, and if you're a fan, get stuck in and really start to learn about what that means moving forward.
I think the way they play, and that was something you just mentioned that really hits me, because there was a lot of talk when Atlanta United was being formed, and you hear it from other fan bases. It seems to be a thing that American soccer battles with, is being authentic, being real, not being plastic, as some would say. And I think Atlanta United did it on two levels. You know, the part about, one, naming the club United. Some people like it, some people don't. Some people are kind of, undecided, kind of mad about it. But when I talked to non-soccer fans who were interested in what was going on with MLS coming to Atlanta, Atlanta United really worked for them because it sounded like a soccer team. It didn't sound like some soccer teams in the U.S. where it sounds more like a minor league baseball team or an arena football team or something like that. It didn't have a mascot attached. It sounded like a soccer team to them. So there's nothing offensive there. It works. People can get on board. And the fact that they went out and went Latin with a lot of key players, that's a good step, and we've seen other clubs in MLS do it. But I think what you said about it being the way that they play, the fact that we can have shows going on all week among, Soccer Down Here and Home Before Dark and Mouths of the South and Siempre United, all talking about tactics and all really digging into the way this team plays. That was the sweet spot. It's one thing to just get players from different parts of the world and expect that their countrymen are going to come support them, or to put a good uniform on, put good branding on, a good team name, good logo, and get that out there. The fact that this team plays the way it does is the part that I think a lot of people, as they try to replicate what Atlanta United does, I think they miss that part. The quality of the actual match when you watch Atlanta United is a key part of its success.
There's no doubt, and it's really it's difficult to replicate. It's really difficult to replicate because it's not just about, hey, get a coach with a philosophy that likes to attack. A lot goes into it, and Carlos Bocanegra has talked about it, about having a specific profile for each position on the field. So that makes, for lack of a better word, like recruiting certain players, it's extremely nuanced, and it's driven by analytics. And it's driven also by like how a specific player in this formation or the system can perform in this league, which is much different from other leagues around the world. So, it's great that everyone can talk tactics, because not everybody likes to, not everybody can understand it. And I think what's great about tactics, though, is that there's kind of like, there are different levels of tactics that you can speak to, and I think because Atlanta United is so transparent in the way that they play, and take for example Mexico under Juan Carlos Osorio, you never knew what you were going to get. You had a striker could play at right back, because of the opponent that he thought that he needed to neutralize. Formations for him were, he didn't mind changing them from one game to another, from one half to another. And I think that's where a lot of the divisiveness came from the Mexican press, is that they didn't know what they had. There wasn't an identity. And something that has been somewhat, I guess, under the radar, is that this team, this club, the front office knew right away we were going to have an identity. We're going to have a very distinct way of playing, and in the vanilla form of saying is like, we're going to attack, we're going to be entertaining. Great, okay, that's, like you said, Jason, that's what gets people drawn in, that maybe haven't followed the sport their entire lives, or just want to be entertained. But if you really dig deeper, it's because they want to they want to be successful long term. When they move a player out of the system, when they sell a player, they want to be able to bring someone that might not necessarily be like for like, but someone that can, again, bolster the attack or strengthen the defense, but at the same time have the same responsibilities within the system that the previous player had. So, I think we talk a lot about attack, which is great. Look, they have big time players, but don't forget what a center back has to do in this system as well. So if for some reason, down the road when Michael Parkhurst hangs up his boots, that is going to be a very interesting replacement. Like who will step in and play next to Leandro Gonzalez Pires and be the type of center back that is extremely technical on the ball, that can create and launch attacks and also defend. So things to look out for as this team continues to progress.
And that kind of brings us full circle when we get back to the cultural side of it. Leandro is fascinating to me in that, he is a player who has come to Atlanta, I think really embraced being part of this group and being in a lot of ways that bridge between the South Americans and the Americans, or Europeans, English, what have you. But Leandro has really embraced trying to be that guy. And for me, I could absolutely see a future where Leandro Gonzalez Pires is the captain of Atlanta United and giving interviews in English and Spanish. It really seems like that's what he's setting himself up to be. And then on the field, the question would be what you just asked: can he step in and replace Michael Parkhurst on the field as a captain and be that organizer? Could a Franco Escobar, could a Miles Robinson be the guy who becomes the more aggressive of the two center backs? These are the next wave of stories that are coming through Atlanta United, and I think this offseason is going to be just crazy in terms of player movement, potential outgoing, potential incoming, and some of these long-term moves might start to pan out a little bit.
Yeah, I think at the end of last season, that's a lot of fans were kind of expecting lots to happen, in the off season, and lots did. I mean, if you look back, Barco, Escobar, some very significant role players now, starters that at the time you weren't sure what you're going to get, but obviously Atlanta knew what they were getting in a player like Franco Escobar, and obviously a playmaker like Barco. But yeah, I agree with you. I think Gonzalez Pires, he was probably scouted, yes, as for his ability to play as a center back in Tata Martino's system, a guy that's clean on the ball, that likes to attack, and coming from River Plate, who in Argentina, a boring River Plate team, just that can't happen. They're a team that has always been very dynamic. From top, from the back to the front, they've had some of the most important attacking players in Argentine history play for them, and defenders as well. And he came from that school, so I think he's mentioned that before when asked about like his role in the team. He's like, that's what we've always done. That's what I grew up doing. So he comes from that school. I think they knew that. But to your point, yeah, I think they probably saw leadership qualities as well, and he has probably embraced that. The role of learning English and being able to captain a side, early on in his career. I think he's going to have a long-term future with this club, and yeah, he's going to wear that captain's armband. There's no doubt.
Yeah, such an underrated part of this group, and that brings us back to where we started, Josef's quote, and I'm 100% with you. I think it's a situation where Josef has such a presence, and even if you don't speak Spanish, I think you get that. But then when you can get to the next layer of some of the things he said, and his swagger and his confidence, and the fact that he was able to use a phrase that fans generally taunt one another with, and he was able to, in a lot of ways, taunt Atlanta United's biggest rival with. That's a bold statement from a guy like Josef.
It is. It's so bold. It's so him. It's so Josef. 2018, and I think last year he was on track to do this last year, and who knows, maybe we would have seen this side of him in 2017, but he got injured. But yeah, like I said, he recognizes the moment. He's a big time player. And he understands now. That not only is he a big time player in Atlanta, but he's a big time player in this hemisphere. There's Marca, one of Spain's leading soccer and just sports publications. They're covering Atlanta United now, so it's they know it. These players know that this is probably what Darren Eales and Carlos Bocanegra told them was going to happen. We're building something big here. Come be a part of it. You're going to blow up. I think they were probably told that last year, and now it's happening, and they're embracing it. They're having fun with it. All the while knowing that nothing matters unless they win. But they're on the right track. And Josef, I think, expect more of this from him, especially if he keeps performing, in his post-game interviews. He's gonna push boundaries, test limits, and give a good soundbite. And as always, if I'm there, I'm gonna try to make sure that it makes sense to the fans, and that, hey, like I enjoy that part of the process of educating Atlanta United's fans on things that are culturally relevant to this team and things that will resonate for the fan base. So I'm looking forward to it. I think this year, the end of this year is going to be, chock full of highlights and moments. So looking forward to that as well.
I love that Atlanta United and this fan base is this really cool melting pot of the Gulch on a game day where you can walk through and you hear, Nacho and reggaeton over here on one side. You can hear some Outkast and some Goody Mob over here on another. You can hear Led Zeppelin, Leonard Skinner on another side of it. And you can walk from back to front and get all flavors of it and stop and have a conversation at each spot. And that's that's Atlanta soccer. And I've said it for a long time. Soccer in the United States is a bilingual sport. And even if you don't speak it, I think you can be respectful is not the word, but I think just cognizant of the different cultures and open yourself up to learning about it. And what's great here in Atlanta is we have you at Felipe Car on Twitter, our friend at soccer down here, Gustavo Rodriguez, down in Buenos Aires. Mm-hmm. He always chimes in to try to advance the conversation a little bit. The Siempre United guys, I think, do a great job as well when they get into it, and they'll have those conversations. Don't be afraid to reach out. I think this community from a soccer community, and I think from a soccer media community, is very open to having those conversations. And I love that it's just come into the forefront and people get a chance to interact.
Absolutely. I've always said it, both, when we post a story for The Athletic, I always say, please comment, ask questions, let me know what you liked, what you didn't like. And we're going to get back to you, especially, I try to do that all the time. But Twitter, like you said, Twitter is a great place for me to do that as well, because not everything fits in a story. And
sure.
And in my case, for The Athletic, we're not posting daily. I'm not writing game reports immediately after the game. So one thing that's great about Atlanta too is that there's so much content out there right now for fans to engage with. But in those moments, for me, I use Twitter to do that. Hey, this is what I just heard, Miguel Almiron say, or this is what Tata just said, that, instead of just transcribing a post-game press conference, which is what Gustavo does, and it's very significant when he does it, I'll find those nuggets. I'll find things that, I think the fans are going to want to know about this, or something that I feel like, oh my God, this is hilarious because it's difficult to translate, or it goes back to my roots as a fan or as a kid growing up watching this sport with my dad and my uncles in Colombia. So Twitter is a great place for that, and I encourage the fans to comment, to tweet me, and ask questions, and I'll be happy to keep doing what I'm doing.
So it was very cool to hear Josef Martinez essentially drop a "Who's your daddy?" to Orlando, but I think we were able to maybe get a little deeper as to why it was, I think, even more significant than just saying that. I think there was a little more meaning behind it, and hopefully fans who had a chance to listen to this enjoy it. We'll be doing more of these 1v1s. I think Felipe and I could probably talk for hours on end about whatever aspect of Atlanta United or soccer in general we could get into. But we'll try to keep them short, and I can't monopolize all of Felipe's time. So thanks for the time, man. Appreciate it.
Hey, looking forward to next time. Thanks. I always enjoy talking to you, man. And I think Atlanta sports and Atlanta soccer is lucky to have you in the picture. So anytime I can contribute, happy to.
I'm just lucky to get a chance to do it. We'll be back with another SDH 1v1 very soon. Thanks, everybody.